Imagine a female judge sitting in a courtroom. In front of her, an elderly Muslim grandmother falsely accused without evidence. What happens when steadfast faith meets human law? A seemingly ordinary trial that ultimately changes her life forever. This story is about justice, faith, and guidance coming from the most unexpected direction. Watch until the end, because this journey will touch your heart. A woman in her early 30s sat in the judge's chair with a calm expression and a mind carefully guarded to remain rational. She was known as an intelligent, firm individual, and deeply faithful to the Christian beliefs she had learned since childhood. For her, the law was the path of truth, and truth had to be upheld without mercy. Every case had to be weighed with logic and evidence, not with feelings. One day, she presided over a trial that appeared simple. An elderly Muslim woman was brought into the courtroom, her body frail and her clothing modest. Her hair had turned white, her back was slightly bent, and her hands trembled as she held a small bag containing a few sheets of documents. The accusations against her were quite serious. She was charged with theft and fraud, accusations that could destroy what remained of her life. The young judge looked at the elderly woman with professional detachment. She had seen many defendants pretend and cry in order to gain leniency. In her mind, age and appearance were never guarantees of truth. She began the trial with sharp, measured questions. Every answer was recorded, every movement observed. The elderly woman responded in a soft but clear voice. She did not defend herself at length. She simply stated that she had not committed the acts she was accused of. When asked why she appeared so calm, the elderly woman said that she believed justice would come from God. Her words were delivered not with emotion, but with deep conviction. The trial continued with witness testimonies. Several statements sounded convincing, yet small inconsistencies began to disturb the judge's thoughts. The times and places mentioned by the witnesses did not fully align. There were details that did not match, details often overlooked by others. The young judge began to take more notes than usual. In the middle of the hearing, the elderly woman asked permission to speak. She did not beg for mercy. She simply said that throughout her life she had tried to maintain her prayers, give charity even if only a little, and never take what belonged to others. If that day she had to be punished, she would accept it as a test. But if she were freed, she hoped the truth would become a lesson for everyone. Those words shook the judge's heart. She was not accustomed to hearing such calm surrender. She saw no excessive fear, no attempt to manipulate emotions. There was only complete faith in God, whom the woman called Allah. That night, after the day's hearing, the judge could not sleep. The elderly woman's face kept appearing in her mind. She reopened the case files and read every detail more carefully. She discovered a major flaw in the accusations. The primary evidence turned out to be weak and originated from a party with hidden interests. The next day, the trial resumed. In a firm voice, the judge posed additional questions to the witnesses. One by one, the lies began to unravel. The faces of the accusers turned pale. At last, the truth surfaced. The elderly woman was proven innocent and had been a victim of slander. When the gavel was struck to free her, the elderly woman bowed her head and shed tears of gratitude. She did not shout with happiness. She only raised her hands briefly and prayed silently. That sight once again touched the deepest part of the judge's heart. The days following the verdict brought a profound change within the judge. She began to question the faith that could make someone so steadfast in the face of injustice. She started reading about Islam in secret. She studied Tawhid, the justice of God, and the lives of the prophets. The more she read, the more her heart felt that it was finding answers she had not even realized she had been searching for. She remembered the elderly woman's face, her calmness, and her belief that truth is never lost, even if it is delayed. Sometime later, the judge made the greatest decision of her life. She declared her faith in Islam with full awareness and serenity. There was no coercion, no pressure, only a long inner journey that finally reached clarity. She continued her profession as a judge with deeper integrity. She now viewed the law not only as human regulations, but also as a moral trust before God. Every time she saw a weak and marginalized defendant, she remembered the elderly Muslim woman who once stood alone in her courtroom. After embracing Islam, the judge's life did not immediately become easier. She kept the change in her beliefs tightly guarded within her heart. She knew that the world in which she worked was not always friendly toward change, especially change born from spiritual conviction. Yet the tranquility she felt each time she prayed in silence assured her that she had stepped onto the right path. She began waking earlier than usual. As dawn touched the windows of her apartment, she practiced memorizing short prayers in a voice that was almost inaudible. There was a sense of awkwardness, and there was also a sense of deep emotion. Every prostration felt both unfamiliar and comforting, as if her soul had found a home it had long lost. Several months later, she once again presided over a difficult trial. This time, the defendant was a poor young man accused of a serious crime. On the surface, the evidence appeared strong, and pressure from various parties was very real. But the judge no longer saw only files and testimonies. She saw the human being behind the case. She remembered the principles of justice she had learned from Islamic teachings, that justice must be upheld even against oneself and those closest to us. She rejected the subtle pressures that tried to steer the verdict. She dug deeper into the facts, postponing her decision despite criticism. Her courage made the atmosphere in the courtroom tense. In the midst of the process, the elderly Muslim woman she had once acquitted returned, this time not as a defendant, but as someone bringing simple food and prayers. She did not meet the judge directly, but left a short message through an officer, saying that she always prayed for the judge to be granted strength to uphold the truth. That message shook the judge's heart. She realized that the change within herself was not only for her own sake, but also carried an impact on many others. She felt a greater responsibility than ever before. In the end, the truth was revealed once again. The poor young man was innocent, and a larger network of slander was exposed to the public. The judge's verdict became widely discussed. Some praised it, others were suspicious. Yet she remained upright, calm, and confident. Gradually, the changes within her became visible to her closest colleagues. Her demeanor grew more patient, her words more guarded, and her decisions increasingly guided by conscience. One day, she chose no longer to hide her beliefs. In a simple and dignified manner, she conveyed that she had found peace in Islam. The reactions varied. Some distanced themselves, some showed respect, and others quietly became curious. The judge accepted them all with an open heart. She knew that guidance cannot be forced, just as she herself had found it through a long journey. On quiet nights, she often reflected on the beginning of this story, about an elderly woman who was slandered yet remained fully surrendered to God. From the sincerity of someone considered weak in the eyes of the world, courage and light were born for a judge who held power. She now believes that true justice is not merely about winning cases, but about preserving humanity. And in every verdict she delivers, she prays that her steps always remain within the pleasure of Allah, just as the prayers of an elderly woman once changed the direction of her life forever.